Good afternoon, everyone. I see a lot of people still hopping in here. We did want to go ahead and say that we'll get started in just a couple minutes. You are in the right place. I can just still see a lot of people joining right now. This webinar does have live captions, so those should be working. And as I said, I can see a lot of people still joining. So we'll give it another minute or so. Pretty steadily. Okay, well, we're about 2 minutes past. So good afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Bethany Servin, and I am the marketing director here at UsableNet. Our webinar today is on how a blind person uses a website. As I said, we still have quite a few people coming in. So before we really get started into the meat of the presentation, I'll just go over a few housekeeping items. All attendees are muted, but if you have a question during the presentation, we encourage you to please send them in via the questions box. We have allocated time at the end of the session to get to those questions. And if we don't get to your question today, Zoom does capture your information if you send in a question. So we will reach out to you directly after the webinar. Also, we are recording today's session, and you will receive an email early next week when that recording is available to watch on demand. We encourage you to share those resources with other members of your team as well. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our speakers today. On the line, we have Joseph DiNero, who is an assistive technology specialist at Helen Keller Services for the Blind. Joe also works here at UsableNet as a lead digital accessibility tester. And we have Jason Taylor, who is the Chief Innovation Strategist and Advisor to the UsableNet CEO. And with that, I'll let Jason take over.
Thanks, Bethany. Alert, audio now. Thanks, Bethany. And welcome, everybody. I am always pleased to be working with Joe, and the main goal today is really to give you an overview of how Joe uses his screen reader to get around the web, but also to give you an overview of how important the coding and the quality of the website gives Joe from an experience point of view. So what we want to do is, first I'm going to do a little bit of an interview with Joe so you can understand Joe, where he comes from, what type of work he works on. And I want to just cover in the base level how a screen reader works with a website and with a browser and with a computer. So we'll sort of just go over that base level of building blocks so you understand how everything's connected. We'll talk about the most popular screen reader browser combos. That's important if you're thinking about getting out there and making sure that you're testing your websites or apps. And we'll talk very briefly about like the top number, but also how that might change if depending on the type of site you have and the type of customers you have. And then we're going to basically spend most of the time with Joe looking at different sites, understanding how he goes about navigating a new site, thinking about a new site, experiencing a new site. So essentially, hopefully putting you guys in his shoes and sort of understand what he's looking for on a website to help guide him to understand what he can do and how to do it on a website. And then we're going to finish with a live Q&A. So essentially, if we could just move to the next slide, and I just wanted to bring Joe on. Alert, the shared content is... Hi, Joe.
Hello. How are you?
Hi, good. So I just wanted to give people a quick background on yourself. I know you wear a number of hats. We talked about, we introduced that you work at the Helen Institute for the Blind. and you also work at UsableNet. Could you give us a little bit more detail around what you do at Helen Keller Services for the Blind?
Okay, so I'm an assistive technology specialist with Helen Keller Services for the Blind. And the agency in of itself provides a multitude of services to visually impaired individuals, from job placement to social services to what I do, which is technology instruction. So I provide visually impaired clients with instruction in how to utilize computers and mobile devices with either magnification software or screen reading software, so that they can either go to school, some sort of higher education, college and such, or to track towards either getting into the workforce or getting back into the workforce if they've had some sort of sudden vision loss later in life.
And then working in the UsableNet team, what type of testing projects do you normally engage with, and how does that work as a team?
So I'm the head tester with the digital accessibility team here at UsableNet, and we do a multitude of different types of projects as far as websites and mobile websites, mobile applications. So it can be airlines to the retail space, to educational institutions. It pretty much, you name it, we've tested it in some capacity.
And I just want to make that clear to people that essentially what Joe does and his team is always testing products for screen reader or different types of disability devices. So his team are all made up of people from the disability community, and essentially it's the verification that they can actually use the websites and the apps that we're working with on the client front. Actually, Joe, I wanted to make it clear that you are blind, but also maybe you could give us a story about your blindness, because I know you weren't born blind. So maybe you could give us a little bit of background about how you ended up where you are today, if that's okay.
No, that's fine. So I was diagnosed about 25 years ago with an eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa. At that time, I had been working in the hotel field for nearly 10 years. And retinitis pigmentosa is a degenerative retinal disease that slowly basically takes your vision over a period of time. So I started using a cane approximately 18 years ago, and became screen reader dependent probably about 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago.
I'm always just interested in your journey and the fact that you probably used computers when you were sighted, but now using computers completely unsighted, and you're actually teaching people who have never used a computer, sighted or unsighted, to use computers unsighted, which, to me sort of is mind blowing. So I wanted to talk quickly about what we're going to show today in terms of from a technical perspective, because I think it's important for people to understand the building blocks. That people hear screen reader and think that it's a strange technology or a special technology that Joe's using to navigate a website. I wanted to basically make you aware that his world is exactly the same as your world. So Bethany, if you could bring up the next slide, which just talks about the building blocks of how Joe uses his screen reader. I think it's really important for people to realize that Joe uses a computer just like anybody else on this call. He uses applications just like us. He uses Word, he uses PDF, he uses Excel, he uses Chrome or Internet Explorer. And then he uses a special application. In his case, he's probably going to be using JAWS. Is that correct today, Joe?
That is correct. We're going to use JAWS today.
So JAWS interacts with those applications. So he's using his computer and his applications just like we use our computer and applications. He's not using anything special other than he's using an interface between the applications and himself to basically tell him which application he's using, what he can do with the application. And when it moves to a web browser, there's two components. There's the web browser itself. So he needs to interact with the web browser to open a website, for example, just like you and us. And then his screen reader can interact with the code of the website. And that's really the important aspect here, is that how good the code is how good the experience is for Joe. So I've really just written out on this slide a sort of a stepping stone for people to understand why is web code that follows the WCAG really important. So first, there's the web code that provides the information to the web browser. So the web browser is still being used to navigate the website. Then the web browser is controlled by the screen reader user. So essentially, Joe's feedback mechanism or controls start with very simple controls, and we're going to show you those. So he uses a screen reader and the keyboard. So he uses tab, he uses arrow, he uses return, he uses shift up, shift down. And then he also uses a set of shortcuts, which I think are going to be unique for you guys to see. So he uses inside of JAWS an ability, for example, to list all headers and then navigate by the headers, or list all links and navigate by the links. So he's not just restricted to standard keyboard commands that we might naturally go to, like tab or return. He has other shortcuts which are built into JAWS that are looking for certain interactions in the web code. And then that's really how he gets around and navigates a website. So all of that information, when he's using his keyboard, is then announced back to him with the screen reader, and we're going to experience that. And really, that is the real purpose of the WCAG, is to essentially make sure that the formatting, the code, is exposing the right information. So when the screen reader starts to ask information about what's going on the page, the features, the functions, the interactions are all coded correctly. So the screen reader user can have exactly the same experience and do exactly the same things that we can do when we're using our eyes, the mouse, and different interactions that we use when we're using a web browser. So that's the sort of building blocks. And then I think the best thing is we'll move over to Joe. But if I can just explain one thing, which I think is always something that people forget, it's not just one screen reader, there's not just one browser. So it's important to know that, you know, certain screen readers act differently. So there's three that are sort of main out there, and I'll get Joe to talk about them. So maybe you could explain, Joe, the difference between JAWS, NVDA, and VoiceOver.
Okay, so both NVDA and JAWS are Windows-based screen readers. JAWS is a paid screen reader. NVDA is a free screen reader. They behave similarly in a lot of ways, but JAWS probably has more functionality and I guess more robust tools available to the user, and they have other things that are designed for corporate environments. NVDA is an open source screen reader, and then VoiceOver is basically the screen reader that is used on the Mac OS platform. So it's just what is available, and it's built in to the Mac operating system. It's actually a free screen reader that's built into the Mac operating system.
So essentially, VoiceOver and NVDA are sort of your free use, sort of, but one for Mac and one for Windows, and yours is more your commercial one that you see a lot more, let's say, in commercial spaces where people have money to buy it, or educational spaces where there's funding to buy applications. Exactly. Okay. I'm actually showing a little chart here for people to realize how broad, and it's the same as probably with every sort of internet. There's a broad set of, you know, I like this browser over this browser. So you'll see that the number one combination is JAWS with Chrome. The number two is NVDA with Firefox. So, you know, there's a decision to make, especially if you're thinking about doing testing, which one to use. We typically get a standard request from our clients is we want to test with JAWS and Chrome on Windows, and then we want to test with JAWS, with VoiceOver and Safari on Mac. That sort of covers two major areas for them. And we think that's the sort of the best combination if we give advice about the two different sort of combos that we would test with.
This data is from WebAIM's 2019 survey of screen reader users. And what I can do in the follow-up email is send a link to that if anyone wants to review it further, along with the recording from today's session.
Yeah, a quick call out on that WebAIM survey. Amazing survey. It's been run for the last 7 years. It includes lots and lots of feedback, different types of information around the screen reader users, what type of platforms are on, how they're using mobile over desktop. Lots of really useful information industry-wise, but also for people who are thinking about supporting people who are using screen readers. So kudos for those guys for keeping that survey going. I think it's a great survey. So let's move over to Joe, and I'm going to ask him to do one thing when he first arrives. He's going to use a screen reader to navigate his computer, so you can see that he uses a screen reader to get around his applications. He's going to find a browser, he's going to open a browser, and he's going to take us to a website that he's prepared sort of notes about. So he's going to take us there, and then we're going to stop, and then we're going to talk about some interactions that he does with that website.
Okay.
Yes, Zoom. OK button. You cannot start screen. OK button. Enter.
Someone has to
Alert. If any Alt S. Select bank list but share optimize share screen button. Alert. You have started screen share.
Okay. You can see my screen?
Yep, we can.
Perfect. Okay. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to navigate to my desktop and just a basic command to get to my desktop.
D, folder view, list view.
So I have all my icons on my desktop, and I want to today get to Internet Explorer. So I'm going to use what's called first letter navigation to find all the icons that begin with the letter I.
ING underline.
So that's a picture file.
Internet Explorer, 60 of 87.
And I have 87 icons apparently on my desktop. I need to clean them up, but I'm going to enter on this one.
Launch meeting dash Zoom. Internet Explorer. History tree view. Pet smart services.
Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to navigate up to the address bar. Again, a keyboard command that'll take me right up to the address bar.
Alt D. Address and search use CHEWY. Control Enter. Pet food. Products. Supplies at low price.
And I've gone to the Chewy website, and I'm just
Escape. Navigation
the other
region
thing
in.
I'm doing here is making sure that the screen is maximized. Is it maximized for you guys?
I'm waiting to see if it maximizes. Right now, it's narrow in mobile mode, I think. So.
Alt space. Close. Maximize. Enter. Menu bar. To navigate, press left or right arrow. Leaving menu bar.
Okay, that should have done the ticket.
So, I mean, one of the things I like to do is try to help people observe the way Joe uses his screen reader as he starts to sort of get around his computer and get around the web. So, firstly, you notice that he's using keyboard shortcuts to interact with applications, to find applications, to open applications, to move within those applications. So, you're going to see that. When websites are coded correctly, he also gets the ability to do shortcuts inside of the website itself, not just the web application like the browser. So, but I want to start with the basics. We talk about, maybe Joe, like, I don't know, when you first take on a student that, first time sort of freshly gets on a computer, do you introduce them just to the idea of tabbing first and return and shift tab? And using the arrow key to hear what's on the page? Or how do you first go about sort of training someone who actually has never used a screen reader before?
Yeah, we will. So there's three methods of navigation when it comes to websites. So there's arrow navigation, which is the most basic. Then there's tab navigation, which where you tab from focusable element to focusable element. And we usually introduce them to those navigation methods initially so that they can get a kind of a feel for just how a website is laid out in the most basic way. And then after that, we introduce what's called quick navigation keys, where you can kind of jump to different types of elements that are on the screen that are within the web.
Let's start with tab. I mean, but the reason I want to start with tab, one, it's very simple, but also people might hear of things like, oh, you got to make sure the tab order is correct, or you know, is the tab order in the way that you would want the tab order? So tab order can be set in the code. It's not by default layout wise. You can change the tab order regardless of what the layout looks like. So when you listen to tab order, meaning Joe's going to go through and tab and he's going to listen to the tabs, you as a person who owns a website can be thinking, is that the tab order that I would want my website to be in for someone who is listening to the website? So essentially, is it getting to the good stuff fast? Is it the most prominent stuff that I want in terms of the order that I expect? Because a lot of the times you'll see visually things are laid out in a certain way to give emphasis. But on the code side, you can give emphasis in different ways. So for example, you can put certain things in front of tab order, so they're the first things you get to. But I just want Joe to sort of show you how that works.
Okay, so I'm going to start tabbing through the page. Focus is at the top of the page right now. So I'm going to start tabbing.
Skip to search same page link.
So there's a skip to navigation link to bring me to the search.
Skip to main content same.
There's also a skip to navigation link to bring me to the main content on the page.
Chewy homepage heading level 1 link visited.
Heading for Chewy.
Find the best for your pet. Edit has pop-up. Type.
That's a search field.
Clear button to activate prep.
Clear button.
Clear. Submit button to submit button. 24/7 help link. Open customer support menu button menu. Press space to activate your account link. Open account menu button menu. Press space. 0 your card link.
And so that's one way. If I overshot, I could actually shift tab back through.
Open account your account link.
If I needed to get to something.
Open customer support 24/7 help link.
So all these links are very clear in what they're conveying to me. 24/7 help.
Open customer support menu.
Open customer support menu.
Your account link.
My account. So any one of these, I'm going to assume is going to take me to, say your account is going to take me to my account information.
Great. Now introduce us to maybe what our class is, anyway, because you're an advanced user, like
what food?
Different shortcuts that are available to you, which reveal sort of what's happening on the page and what you can do on the page. And then also sort of talk to us about how you would use those shortcuts to sort of navigate a site, rather than, if you wouldn't use tab, which way would you start to use if it was available?
Okay. So some of the things that I can do is use what's called quick navigation keys. And basically I can navigate to any web element that's on the screen. So a heading, a link, a button, a combo box, an edit field. So depending on what the need is for any given page. So if I'm on a form, I can get to like the first edit field in a form. If I'm on, like in the example of this with Chewy, I want to check out the headings. I'm going to bring up first a list of the headings that are on this page. So I'm going to bring up a list of those.
Heading list dialog. Headings list view.
So this is the list of headings that are on the screen.
Extra 5% off with auto ship and save :2. Customer favorites :2. 3 of 17. 1,000 plus brands in stock :2.
So these are just some examples of the headings that are on the screen. And what the headings are, basically, the corollary that I always use with my students, and I'm going to close this out now,
Escape blank.
Is that they're kind of like a newspaper. They're the headlines in a newspaper. So when they're done really well, you can tell from the heading kind of what the content is going to be contained within that section on the page. So if I'm going to navigate up to the top of the page, and I'm going to start using heading navigation now.
H. Escape. Escape. H. Escape.
I lost focus though.
Jaws profession. Pet food. Products. Supply. H. Escape. F6. Toolbar back. F6. F6. Escape. Toolbar recent. Context menu. To navigate, press up or down arrow.
Bear with me.
F6. Escape. Leaving menus. Toolbar recent pages. F6. Google. G. History. Escape. Escape.
I might have to.
Google. History. Escape. Leaving menus. Toolbar. F6.
I think this is an issue with JAWS right now. I'm gonna reload the page because JAWS is just not acting correctly. So give me 1 second.
Alt F4. Windows D. Folder view I. IMG underline 012 I. Internet enter. Internet Explorer. History tree view. Alt D. CAEWY. Control enter. Search button. Escape. Home. H. Escape. Pet food. Products.
Okay.
Top of file. H. Escape.
I mean, just a note, Joe, I mean, for everybody on this call, I'd imagine lots of people
5% off.
that are watching you right now realize that the complexity of being blind and navigating a digital world, it becomes very obvious when you start to see the struggles that you have. It's frustrating enough for people who are sighted when their computer's not working well. When you're blind and you don't know why it's not working, it's doubly frustrating. So that's also just a call back to everything you can do to simplify a website, to simplify the way that people can navigate the site. It's tenfold when you talk about the payoff for people who are blind and using screen readers. So I just want to make that point.
So I'm on the
Chewy homepage.
so I've gone to the first heading, Chewy.
Extra 5% off with auto ship and save heading level 2.
Extra 5% off. All these headings are done really well. It's pretty clear or I can anticipate what the content is going to be based on these headings.
Customer favorites heading level 2.
Customer favorites.
1,000 plus brands in stock heading level 2.
So I'm going to go back to customer favorites.
Customer favorites heading level 2.
And I'm going to start going through that section of the page.
Link dog food.
So there's dog food.
Link dog treats.
Dog treats.
Link cat litter. Link veterinary diet dog. Visited link dog toys.
And I'm going to go with dog toys. I want to get my
Enter.
dog a new toy.
Dog toys link.
Wait for that page to load.
Dog toys and puppy toys : low prices left.
Okay. So we're going to go through that.
Dog toys heading level 1.
So there's a heading that tells me that it kind of affirms that that the page is loaded and that I'm in the dog toys section. And I'm going to continue with heading navigation.
Cozy Marvin the Moose plush dog toy, medium heading left.
So this is the listing of the products within the dog toy section, and they're listed as headings, which is really good because, again, it's telling me information about, it's telling me what the toy is.
Chuck It, ultra rubber ball tough dog toy.
So for example, the Chuck It toy.
Blank. Visited link $5.65, $10.99. Blank. Visited link 1,000. Blank. Visited link. Free 1-3-day shipping over $1.49.
So free 1-day shipping.
Zippy paws skinny pants no stuff.
If I go back to heading navigation, it's going to take me to the next toy. So this allows me to move quicker. If I was just using arrow navigation, I would have to just slowly navigate through this. But if I'm looking, say, specifically for a ball toy, I can just use heading navigation and get directly to you know, just the toys that are the ones that I'm looking for. If I don't want a squeaky toy, if I don't want a plush toy, if I just want kind of balls for my dog, then I can find those very quickly by just using heading navigation. So I'm going to go back to one of them.
Chuck It, Ultra Rubber Ball Tough Dog Toy, medium.
So I'm going to enter on that.
Enter.
And wait for it to load.
Chuck It, Ultra Rubber Ball. Questions and answers. Chuck It, Ultra Rubber Ball Tough Dog Toy, heading level 1.
So I'm going to start just navigating down through the page. I'm going back to arrow navigation.
Link by Chuck It. Rating: 4.8 of 5 stars. Graphic. Same page link, 1,746 reviews.
So it's telling me how many reviews there are.
Same page link, 21 answered questions.
It's 21 answer questions.
List of free items. List price colon blank $10.99 blank price colon blank $5.65 free 1-3 day shipping over $49.
So the information is very clear. The order makes sense. If I went back to heading navigation on this product description page,
questions and answers, heading level 2.
I could go to the questions and answers
Are
section.
PCs bowls tested for toxic chemicals and environmental toxins? Heading level 3 link.
So just for example, like the questions and answers, the question is actually listed as a heading. So I can go directly through these questions and then just arrow down and listen to the answer.
Chuck It pet toys have been tested by an independent facility for lead, antimony, arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, mercury, selenium, and determined.
So Joe, I wanted to just emphasize something there. So Joe's using headers to find his area and then arrow once he gets into his area. So essentially you've got this sort of combo where if a site gives him sort of a bigger picture, so does good jobs with header structure, then he knows he can get to an area he wants to quite quickly, and then he can start using arrow, which is a more minute movement to basically get around that area. So rather than, if there's no headers on a page, he basically has to arrow through everything on the page to try and find the bit that he wants. Would that be correct, Joe?
That's correct. And that's the way I generally, once we teach quick navigation keys, that's how we will teach, is we use the quick navigation method of kind of getting to the desired area on a page, and then we switch to either tab navigation or arrow navigation, which are the smaller navigational jumps to get the information that we're looking for.
So maybe we go to, I was going to look at, I think it's always useful to look at a good and maybe also a less good example. So so people can sort of understand when things are, when that sort of thing isn't available, or the site is a lot more sort of, hasn't had a lot of thought put into it from a structure point of view, easy navigation point of view. I think we were working with one earlier today, Joe, that I think sort of highlights that, right? So could you maybe bring that up?
Search box edit.
Yep. Switch out.
G, Google enter. Address and search bar edit.
So we're going to do
Alt-D. Escape. CARANDTRUKRENOTES. Control enter. Address and search bar. CaringTruckRemotes.com. Keyless entry remotes, key fobs, replace.
Okay, so again, I'm going to bring up the list of
Numlock on, numlock off.
Of headings on this page.
Heading list dialog, headings list view, receive updates
and I'm not really hearing anything.
Escape. Escape. Receive updates and special offer wrapping to top. Receive updates and special offers heading level 2.
Other than the one heading.
And that's Joe. And this is when suddenly Joe doesn't get to see what we see, right? So Joe, that's primarily right now, the window that you're in is a pop-up, which is a sign up for email, which is a pop-up over the top of the homepage. And I think this is really important for people to understand that when you put a pop-up, A screen reader user doesn't know he's on a pop-up. If it takes focus, unless he's being told it's, you know, it's an overlay or it's a pop-up that he can close, it's a very you know, frustrating experience. So it's very important that whatever items that are put on the homepage, whether it's a privacy policy, a sign up for cookies, agree to cookies, sign up for email, that it's clear this is what it is. It's a promotion. So Joe hears that it's a promotion and knows probably that it's something that is an overlay on here. So I think you can probably arrow navigate to close this window, Joe.
Blank. Join your email blank. Enter your email address. Enter the subscribe button. Edit. Escape. Locksmith store menu. Sale menu. We buy remotes menu. Keyless entry with open accessibility menu button. Link Norton shopping guarantee.
I just want to, it's very hard for Joe to know what's happening. He's hearing some bad stuff.
Tracy Caulfield to
But essentially the close button is not in natural tab order after subscribe. So the tab order that runs here is basically the header for the pop-up, the email field, the subscribe field, and then focus goes to the main page behind. So Joe actually can now he's probably actually focused on the main page behind, but he can't close that window. So I think, again, if you go to header window, Joe.
Yep.
If you go to
list dialog, headings list view, receive updates.
Still just the same one heading.
Yeah. So essentially, it's still showing only one heading because the actual element that JAWS can basically interact with right now is the pop-up we're seeing right now, which is the receive updates. I think if you maybe load that page again, it might disappear, or it might I might be able to navigate and close it.
Norton shopping guarantee link.
So I've just refreshed the page. And
Then lock on. Then lock off. Heading list dialog. Headings list view. Receive updates.
no.
Escape.
So we can actually see that panel now isn't actually prominent, but it's still it still has no additional headers on this page. So you know, here's a good example of maybe a site that's just trying to do too much. For those who are looking at this site, you know, there's a lot going on this website, and it's not amazingly easy to use. This is the type of website that unfortunately has also decided that the best way to solve the accessibility is to add a widget. So you might see that there's a widget on the bottom left-hand corner. And actually, Joe and I tried to use that widget earlier today. We did a little video of it that we can share after this. But for example, Joe, I think if you go right now to tab, it will probably, it'll go to keyboard tab. It will probably try to ask you to put it on.
Keyless entry. Accessibility menu.
Press enter to skip to
Accessibility
main
menu
content.
frame. Keyless.
Yep. It has.
Press enter to enable accessibility for visually
impaired.
impaired.
Button. Press
Press
enter to open the user accessibility menu. Button. Keyless
So
accessibility company
the
homepage.
first thing I want your feedback on, Joe, is you're using a screen reader to interact with a website, and then there's a potential, what they're trying to do is give you a widget to then use their controls to solve the problems that you may have on that site. How does that work for you? For example, I mean, it sounds like it's another layer of technology that you need to understand, or is it something that's quite unintrusive? I mean, is it when you experience these types of widgets?
Well, if I'm going to use that widget, what I'm going to have to do, because it's got its own text to speech, it's got its own screen reader, basically, technology, I'm going to have to probably turn my screen reader off. I'm going to have to turn JAWS off because they're going to be talking at the same time. So that's going to be hard to understand. And the other piece of it is that when I turn JAWS off, I lose the ability to utilize all those keyboard shortcuts. Now, they may have some sort of their own keyboard shortcuts that are built into that widget, but that involves learning them. and, learning, you're trying to navigate something quickly that, you're allocating time just to learn how to use a widget to navigate a website. That doesn't really make any sense. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look at that option where it says enable accessibility for visually impaired. If you can select that, let's see.
Press enter to open the underway accessibility menu. Press enter to enable accessibility for visually impaired.
Button.
Okay.
Enter. Keyless entry remotes. Key fobs. Replacement car remotes. Smart.
Okay, I just did that.
Press
Accessibility
enter to
menu.
skip to main close menu.
Button.
Um,
Enter. Keyless entry remotes.
Well, I think you've managed to close the window, but I don't think you managed to execute the actual widget to add anything.
Keyless
To
enter your email
maybe
address.
try it again.
Edit.
all right, let's
Okay.
try this
Vote.
again.
Keyless entry remote. Keyless entry remotes. 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 Key fob.
And now I can't get back
Search
to it.
text edit. Keyless
So
entry.
maybe we can stop there, because I probably other people, this becomes quite painful, but you may have even noticed that Joe was tabbing across the top navigation, but hearing exactly the same navigation. I think that, the main issue for Joe when he thinks about how is someone going to make this site easy for him to use, if they can do the simple things, which are reasonably simple in terms of structure, headers, navigation, which he understands, he's happy with it. He's happy to use a website. If they add something that then makes him need to turn something on, learn something new, changes the way that he can use his technology, it doesn't seem to present a positive experience to him in terms of experience. And I said, we didn't want to do it live, the whole thing, because it took us a couple of hours for Joe to even get around the widget, but we actually made a video of that, and we can share it after this. But I'm also conscious of the time, and I want to make sure that we get to some questions, because I know there'll be some good questions for Joe. So maybe Bethany, you could pick out some questions. Joe, maybe we'll go back to George and Internet Explorer and Chewy in case someone wants to ask a question about the demo that you did.
Okay, so I'm going to close this out.
Alt F4. Alert from Tracy Caulfield.
Okay.
Jaws Professional. Chuck it. Ultra Rubber Ball.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and start with some questions for Joe. When you first navigate to a new page, do you typically start with heading navigation rather than beginning with tab navigation at the top of the page? And how often is it, I think the question we didn't get to before, how often is a skip to content link at the top of the page helpful?
I guess the short answer depends on what it is that I'm looking to do. So if I'm looking to say shop on a retail site and sort of the navigational menu is up at the top, I may use arrow and tab navigation to navigate rather than heading navigation. But once I've say it's a retail site and it's a clothing site, and I'm looking for t-shirts, and I enter on the t-shirts link within the navigational menu. Once I get to the listings, then I'm going to use heading navigation to try to get directly to that section of the page where those listings are. The skip to navigation links, they're useful sometimes if you're looking to contact the company, that's usually in the footer. So if there's a good skip to navigation link to get you to the footer, or a skip to main content section, those are really, really helpful to get you to jump to the main content on the page. I think it all depends on what the website is and what they're doing as far as business-wise.
Okay, so another question about, this one's about Chewy. With things like the Chewy product flashcards, would you prefer or recommend the product cards be tagged as a list so the list count and your position are available? Or do you find that level of verbosity is more annoying than helpful? Or does list position not even get voiced by JAWS when you are jumping between headers or links?
Wait, repeat the first part of the question.
With things like Chewy product flashcards, would you prefer or recommend the product cards to be tagged as a list, so the list count and like how far down I think you are on the list is available? Or is that more annoying than helpful?
Lists are helpful at times, and there's actually a way to navigate specifically to a list and to navigate through the list items. There are actually quick navigation keys that I'm able to utilize to get through that. So, and sometimes lists are extremely helpful if things are structured that way from a presentation standpoint.
We have a few questions about apps, and just sort of start going in that direction. Do you always work on a desktop, or do you work on devices like iPads and smartphones? Does the site's responsive design matter to your experience?
Again, it depends on, sometimes I find mobile applications are easier to use based on what I need to do. And sometimes I find the desktop experience more easier to use. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Alert from Kathleen Callahan.
Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to mute my speech.
Numlock on, numlock off, space. Speech on.
A lot of retail stuff and banking stuff I'll do through mobile applications, but there are other situations where I use websites as well. It just depends.
Joe, I just to refine that, because I think we've had this conversation before. I think the question was also a little bit like, well, if you want to, I first asked the question of like, how much of your world, I say personal world, do you do on your mobile phone over desktop? And then secondly, I think the question was really, if you're on a mobile phone, would you mostly be using an app? Do you ever go to websites on a phone? So the mobile version of the phone really matters. Like, how important is the mobile version of the phone of the website to you as a user? I think that's really the crux of the question.
Okay, so probably I use my mobile device for a lot of the stuff that I do. Probably I would say two-thirds of the time. I'm mostly on a mobile device. I tend to use mobile applications over mobile browser. I do sometimes use a mobile browser, but I tend to use mobile applications more.
And then when it's a mobile browser, you're using VoiceOver, right, to go through the website. Does it have a similar type of controls as VoiceOver on a desktop, or is it a different experience?
Somewhat similar. Somewhat similar. If I'm using a mobile browser, I'm usually using an external Bluetooth keyboard with my mobile device, just so I have easier access to, again, the quick navigation that's built into VoiceOver. So I can kind of bounce around. It's a little bit easier than using touch gestures for me.
Okay.
Okay. There's a lot of questions coming in. I just want to pick off some of them are a little bit more in detail. Here's a simple one. Does JAWS work with Chrome extensions or apps?
Sometimes. Not always.
Okay, here's a more.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like installing extensions, yes, absolutely. It's not I can easily find a Chrome extension, install it, but whether it works with it, sometimes not so much. Depends on the extension.
And then what is the biggest obstacle you typically encounter in surfing the web? If you're just, I mean, they say surfing the web, so I guess if you're just using it recreationally.
There's a multitude. If there's poor heading structure, it just makes for a very cumbersome, slow experience to try to get to whatever the desired content area is. If there's, say, if I'm on a retail site and I'm trying to check out, I'm making a purchase and checking out, if the form is poorly labeled, and I'm trying to figure out what each edit field in a checkout form is for, address information, shipping information, billing information, credit card information, all that stuff. If it's not really labeled well, I struggle to. It's gonna when things are done well, ultimately, it doesn't take me much longer than a sighted user to check out. I probably would, comparably have a similar shopping experience time-wise. When things are not labeled well, it could take forever, and it's just it's a very frustrating experience.
Okay. Once you find out there's a search functionality, do you prefer to use that over scanning the page with headers or tabbing through the elements? That's how I, as a sighted user actually, if I have something specific, I'll go right to search.
What she asked about? What was the first part of that?
Once you find out that the page has a search functionality, do you prefer to use that over scanning the page with headers or tabbing through elements?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If I'm looking for like a product, sometimes I use the search feature. So if I'm on something like Amazon, I'm going to use a search feature because I'm generally looking for something specific. If it's other things, like if I'm again using clothing as an example, and I don't know what I'm looking to buy some new clothes for the fall, for example. I don't necessarily know what I'm looking for, so I will, go through the menus and look through the men's section, look through pants or shirts or polo shirts, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I guess it just depends on, and I think that's for many people. I think it depends on what ultimately you're looking to do.
So here's a question about accessibility footers. Many websites now have an accessibility footer that leads to an accessibility statement. The statement sometimes provides information about how to get assistance with navigating the website and lists limitations regarding WCAG compliance. Do you find the accessibility statement to be helpful? I guess assuming that you've gotten down to the bottom, the footer, and found that.
Do I find it helpful? Only, I guess, from the standpoint of that the company's addressing accessibility and it's important to them, and they're being proactive about trying to incorporate accessibility into their website.
Have you ever used, Joe, have you ever used one of the places to contact a site through that particular method? How would you normally contact a company if you had a problem with the website?
If I had a problem with the website, if it's a severe enough problem, I'd probably do business elsewhere.
Sounds like everyone else's answer. Sounds like anyone else.
If it's frustrating, it's no different than if you had a problem with you know, not in the scope of accessibility. If you had a problem with a company and you're frustrated by the experience, you're just not going to do business with them.
Okay. So how often are you encountering overlays, like the one that we showed that force you to use them versus when they're presented as, versus them being presented as an option that you can easily skip over?
They're becoming more and more. I don't know. I couldn't give you a percentage, but they're becoming more and more prevalent. Overlays are used a lot now, and a lot of them you can't get past them at all. You're not able to, you have challenges getting the keyboard to interact with them, even to close them so that you can actually get to the main content of a page. So you're out of the box. You can't function on that particular website.
So this person says, since Internet Explorer is on the way out as a browser and JAWS works best with Internet Explorer, do you have any concerns for the future of that screen reader?
Do I have concerns with Internet Explorer?
No, I think JAWS, but I think JAWS works fine with Chrome, right?
Yeah, JAWS. As an instructor, you know, I have been sort of migrating my clients over to Chrome over the last year and a half, just in anticipation that Internet Explorer is going to be sunset at some point in favor of Edge.
One thing
Microsoft is doing.
It actually brings up an important point for anyone out there who's thinking about adding, which I think is a very important part of testing for accessibility, adding someone like Joe to the process, right? So typically you might have a great website. You're like, okay, we've done a lot of accessibility work. We're going to go get a couple of people who use screen readers every day, like Joe, and verify that they can complete the journeys that everyone else would complete, which is what we normally recommend. Like, can you do the main user tasks on a site and make sure that works well with a screen reader? And sometimes in the past, companies have, they don't think about what the other person is using, meaning they hire a couple of people and then those people have problems and they're thinking, what are these problems? But what they didn't realize is that these people are using, for example, Internet Explorer and JAWS, but the actual website has not been tested with Internet Explorer. So the devs didn't build the website to work with Internet Explorer. So a lot of the problems someone could find if they test with Internet Explorer and JAWS is actually Internet Explorer related and not JAWS related, not screen reader related. So it's important to make sure that, the testing process that you have, the browser decisions that you make when you involve people with screen readers match up with what other testing that your company's done. Otherwise, you can potentially include issues which are not related to the screen reader and accessibility when they test them.
Okay, so we are at the hour mark and we had more than 30 questions come in. But the great thing about Zoom is that I will have a record of all of these questions and I can compile them and we can answer them and send them out to everyone. I think this is sort of a good place to wrap up, and I would just ask Jason and Joe if you have any sort of final comments or takeaways that you would like everyone to have before they leave the session today.
Well, one, I'd like to thank Joe, but I'd also just like to encourage everybody to involve someone like Joe in their process. There's lots of places that you can find members of the community, not just blind, but other types of disabilities that can be involved in your testing process, in your design process. but also even doing a session like this with some of your developers for them to really see what type of technology that needs to be supported, I think is very eye-opening. So I'd encourage everybody to sort of make sure that this is not the first time that you get to see someone using screen reader technology, and it's not the only time that your company gets to see it. It becomes part of everyday experience.
Okay, and Joe, any final thoughts before? I'm seeing a lot of people start to drop off, but if you have anything, everyone's saying it's been very helpful.
I love doing these, and it's just a great opportunity to let people see, you know, kind of, no pun intended, see what it's like through my eyes of what, you know, what the experience is like, and you know, and to help, ultimately to help them to make their websites better. So I always enjoy doing these.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you to our presenters. As I said, we got a lot of questions in, so I can compile those, and we'll try to get all questions answered in a follow-up. I recorded this session today, and we will send out a link to that, as well as a link to the transcript to everyone that registered for today's session, and we encourage you to share those materials with members of your team. So thank you so much everyone for joining, and with that, the webinar is now ended.